Oh yeah, if there's one thing I love, it's Dimir deck. I personally have 4 paper decks, Dimir decks. It's just a color combination that makes sense to me. And this one has me salivating, brother. I think this one hits it, but it's a little scattered. Let's take a look at some of the new cards, the reprints, of which there are many of high value. And I really dig this deck. Alright, the face commander for Revenant Recon is Mirko Obsessed Theorist. This guy's 1 blue and a black for a legendary creature vampire detective. It's a 1/3 with flying vigilance. Whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Mirko. At the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than Mirko's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it, so if it would die, exile it instead. This is a pretty decent reanimator commander that leans into surveil, and that's a pretty well supported mechanic. Unfortunately, this fella starts as a 1/3, so you'll need quite a bit of surveil to get back anything impactful. Note that it says less than, so if he's a 2/4, you can't get back the Mole Drifter dude, 'cause that's a 2/2. The finality counter kinda sucks as well, but that's life in the big city, brother. I like how he's got magical telekinesis powers, but he uses it to read books, man. That's a real LeVar Burton move right there, man. Educate yourself. And the secondary commander for Revenant Recon, this is a new guy here, Margot Deep Operative. It's 3 blue and a black for a legendary creature, Octopus Rogue. It's a 1/8. When this guy attacks, clash with defending players. So the clashing players reveal the top card of the library, then puts that card on the top or bottom. A player wins if their card has a higher mana value. If you win a clash, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value 8 or less without paying its mana cost. That's pretty awesome. Clashing is sadly not a super supported mechanic, and there aren't really many great cards that do it, but it's kind of neat to be able to get free spells, man. Marco's kind of a build around. He's alright in this deck, but you have a heavy top deck manipulation, perhaps lots of 8 mana sorceries, of which we know they're all broken beyond belief. I'll build around this guy, maybe do a budget deck. Could be a really fun deck. In this deck, it's just a value piece. It's not a super great one, but there's a ton of surveil in this deck that would let you manipulate the clashes. And we're going straight from clashes to eyelashes with the Eye of Dusk Mantle. 5 black for a creature eye. It's a 3/8 with flying and lifelink. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard. Use surveil this turn. If you cast a spell this way, you pay life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. This is great in this deck specifically, and we're going to soup it up to include more surveil. But I like a big bulbous eye, dude. I actually have a winged eyeball tattooed on my stomach. Not even joking about that. But in this deck, it can be reanimated easily because Mirko cares about power, and it's just free cast from graveyard value for funsies. Then we have this guy, the Unshakable Tail. You know, when people tell you to shake your tail, dude, this guy says no way. 2 and a black for a creature, zombie detective. It's a 3/2. When this guy enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. Whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, investigate. So you have 2, sacrifice a clue, return this guy from your graveyard to your hand. Hey man, any zombie wielding a crowbar can come to dinner at my house any day of the week, son. This does a lot in this deck. It's repeatable surveil. Then we have the Watcher of Hours. You basically just suspend this guy and then do a surveil every turn. He's a big buff maniac, just making sure you clock in, clock out. Look at this beast, dude. He's eating 200 grams of protein a day, no problem. Repeatable surveil is what we need in this deck, and if he ends up in the graveyard, we can just reanimate him. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything else worthy of highlight, so let's move on to the reprints. This has the holy trinity of reanimate spells, and though this deck is focused on self-mill and surveil, these 3 cards can target any graveyard, so they're awesome. You got Reanimate out there, classic. You get that sweet Grave Titan art, man. He's got a belly full of zombies. He's ready to fall all over the place. Yeah, Reanimate's about $10. Animate Dead is about $5. So this is another super wordy card that's a 2 mana Reanimate spell that can target a creature in any graveyard. This deck has a fair amount of removal, so getting those cards back from your opponent's graveyards might be key. Then you have Necromancy, a $13 card. This comes back with new art. I much prefer the old art from Visions with some silly goose popping back into the plane of the living, but this is nice too. Another super wordy card. Basically the same thing as Animate Dead, but this can be cast at instant speed, but you have to sacrifice at end step. This deck also has a whole grip of expensive reanimator targets. Got Massacre Worm out there, much less than it used to be. This is a bonkers card, great reanimator target. Then you have Grave Titan. I call him Gravy Tots. He's Gran Turismo. This guy's just a fun, stupid commander card that nobody thinks is good on the internet, but it's good in every game I've ever played it in, man. It's a fun little card for sure. Doom Whisperer, Mr. Handsy over here. This guy is over in Kanye West's ear whispering doom, dude. He's telling him, hey man, you know, whatever he needs to tell him. This is a repeatable surveil on an undercosted body. Sphinx of the Second Sun, of course, this guy is flying. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, there's an additional beginning phase after this phase. The beginning phase includes the untap, upkeep, and draw steps. So you're getting your extra upkeep, untap, and draw. Glad this has reminder text because nobody knows what a beginning phase is. This guy's another beefy Sphinx, man. Just a really neat value engine. This card was about $8. Phyrexian Metamorph. I can't believe this is $10 again. I got a couple of these after a reprint for much cheaper. Excellent card, and these clones that have 0 power are great targets for my dude Mirko. Everybody loves Toxic Deluge, arguably one of the best, but definitely the most efficient board wipe out there. Toxic Deluge, you can shape it to your needs. That's what happens when you post your opinion on the internet, dude. You get a Toxic Deluge of comments in the comments, brother. Just don't do it. And I have one more reprint to highlight, Rise of the Dark Realms. There she is, the mistress of the damned, the most evil lady on the planet, Taylor Swift. She's getting carried around by all these rotting Swifties out there, dude. They're simping, they're pimping. This card was $20 and might be better suited to a dedicated mill deck, but it's fine as a curve topper here. So how do we go about upgrading this deck? Well, it's pretty cohesive right out of the box, but not enough instances of Surveil. Maybe a few more Reanimator targets and a few more Reanimator spells. That's kind of what this deck is. It's a Reanimator shell, you have a Reanimator commander, but it's more directed at bringing mid to low power creatures back with Mirko. Fortunately for us, there are very cheap creatures that do that as a part of their ability set. Phyrexian Delver, 3 black for a creature Phyrexian zombie. It's a 3/2. When this guy enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You lose life equal to that card's mana value. I'm perpetually confused as to what this art is. I like the old version, this art here. It's got a more fleshy aesthetic. What can I say? I'm a fan of the old flesh, brother. But this card's going to be easy to bring back with Mirko because it's only a 3/2. If you get this in your graveyard and some big fatty boom batty, you bring this back with Mirko and get your big fatty back, dude. Pay your life. This poor guy, the Doomed Necromancer, 2 and a black for a creature, human cleric mercenary. It's a 2/2. Has black and tap, sacrifice, or return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Look at this guy, man. This is classic magic art, dude. Tells a story. This is easily reanimated with Mirko as well. Let's throw in the old Obsessive Stitcher. 1 blue and a black for a creature, human wizard. It's a 0/3. Has tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Has 2 blue and a black, tap, sacrifice it, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Even more easily reanimated due to having 0 toughness, it's a looting reanimation spell. Nothing worse than having your reanimation target stuck in your hand and no way to cast it. Plus she looks like a good time, dude. I mean, not my type, but fun to do a pub crawl with. Add a couple looters to this deck and you'll be in good shape. Now we have a ton of reanimation spells, but this little curve topper might be just what this deck needs. There's already a big expensive reanimation spell in this deck. I cut that thing. Stick and Breach the Multiverse. 5 black for a sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control, then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian, in addition to its other types. This card is awesome, dude. I also added 2 Surveil spells. You have to check the Gatherer wording on these things, but it basically says Surveil 5. Taigam Scheming, Contingency Plan. These are going to feed the graveyard, get our dude a little bigger. So this brings our instants and sorceries with 2 mana value or less up to 9 or so. So let's slot in Sword of Once and Future. 3 generic mana for an artifact. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and black. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Surveil 2. Then you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put in your graveyard, Exile instead has equipped for 2. I guess nobody likes this thing because it's only $2. Our commander has flying and vigilance. Great guy to wear this sword. He likes to surveil. It's pretty fantastic in this deck. It also increases Mirko's power to get things back from the graveyard. I also added a couple reanimator targets, Hullbreaker Horror for its various synergies, and Lord of Change because I just like it, dude. Although Sphinx of Uthun would also be great in this deck. Another good card would be the Ancient One. Though he didn't make it into my version, I can see people adding this. Cards like Body Double are also great. I tinkered around with adding Triarch Praetorian because of that unearth ability in the card draw. Not a bad early game reanimation effect. And that's a $15 upgrade, baby. You got lots of budget left if you want to go and add some bigger reanimator targets, more expensive cards. So what's the philosophy here? Well, we want things in our graveyard. We want to surveil. So that makes Mirko a little more narrow than just a reanimator commander. We also want small power creatures in the yard so we can get them back with his ability. I also threw in Starving Revenant because it's a Revenant deck. Doesn't even have a Revenant, dude. I think the bones of this deck are really good. Just need some tweaking. Get rid of those surveil cards that get a little bigger but don't really do anything else. Play test my version. It's on the description here on Moxfield. The bones are there to build a more expensive deck. You can build in a combo if you want, but this is an excellent starting point. Love this deck, man. Nikki G from Better Commander signing off.